If you have played video games over the last couple of years, then you will have been trained to salivate over items with a gold-tinted border. Expeditions Rome is no exception, with legendary items bringing unique effects to the items that vary from game-breaking to situationally useful to downright hilarious. Using these items adds a whole new dimension of strategy to the game, so you want to be able to collect as many as you possibly can. So today we are going to be looking at doing just that, guiding you through finding every single legendary item available in Act 1. The first item we're going to look at, I think, is going to be the most commonly overlooked item in all of Act 1. So while you can use the timestamps to be able to jump to anything in particular that you are looking for in the video, I hope that you stick around to be able to see all of these little treasures that we have managed to dig up, and we are also going to talk a little bit on where they are best placed within your party and the tactics that can come around from being able to use them. Without further ado, we are going to jump in and start picking up these items in roughly the order that they become available to you as you progress through Act 1. And we are here, this is the island of Lesbos, still in the quote-unquote tutorial section of the game. If we return to the warehouse district after having completed the mission here, then the game has a little goodie for us. Returning to the scene of our first real combat mission here, we see the local villagers are gathered around a funeral pyre for the guards that we had massacred, and like the completionist ruffians we are, we dig through the ashes, and with cheat vision on, you can see the exact piece to be able to interact with, to be able to pick up the token of Libitina. Marked with the skull of the Roman goddess of funerals and burial, your character can become a harbinger of death, and enemies you kill will always die in the most violent possible fashion. These secondary stats on this item are excellent, especially here in the very early portions of the game, and the unique effect is both horrifying and hilarious. So whether or not it becomes too distracting ultimately, and in one of my saves I have actually taken it off, but if you want to laugh, you can check it on and be able to see the mayhem ensue. Up next is the Sword of Archelaus, which is obtained by defeating the Greek general in the final battle of the tutorial portion here on Lesbos. Now, I wish that the legendary item he dropped was actually his armor, because oh, that would have been so much better, but that's not to say that the sword is not good. There are a lot of different ways that you can approach this battle, but you will still obtain the sword whether or not you kill him outright or you just reduce his forces and force his surrender. The sword applies bleeding on every instance of slashing damage and comes equipped with the skills to be able to make the most use of this special effect, and also brings in Gouge, which is going to give you additional burst damage against bleeding targets, removing the stacks of bleeding to be able to get additional damage, or if the target is not actually bleeding, then you are still able to apply bleeding even on this attack. Gouge is a weapon combo skill used with both a blade and a dagger, so to be able to make use of it, you are going to have to put this weapon onto a light infantry character. I think that probably is the best place for it, though you can also put this onto one of your heavies or another character and just have them continually apply the bleed status effect. Being able to put it on heavy, who's going to be on the front line, consistently hitting multiple enemies with that bleed effect can wear the enemies down quite a lot. As soon as you get off of Lesbos, then there are two more legendary items that become available to you pretty much immediately, just with a little bit of exploring. So first off, we are going to head to the Temple of Apollon to be able to pick up a legendary bow for Julia. At the Temple of Apollon, the first thing you're going to want to do is pick up this pickaxe. It is barely visible here, right here, where the people are doing work on the temple wall, and is right next to the flaming temple. If you've already completed this, hopefully you can still find this exact spot. And then, if you go ahead and ascend all of the steps to be able to make it over into the far corner of the map, you'll be able to find a way to use the pickaxe. As long as you have the pickaxe in inventory, you will be able to walk over this portion of the map. If you don't have it, Sinros will give you this little dialogue option saying that he can tell that there is something underneath you, and then you'll be able to climb down the ladder and claim your bow.
This chamber used to be open to the air. Do you see the wall there?
There it is, right at the foot of the torn down statue. Eurytus's bow. Upon dealing a killing blow with an interrupt attack, the stance does not end, allowing you to make another interrupt attack. Obviously, this is the perfect item to give to Jules, who starts the game with a point already put into interrupt, and as you stack the upgrades where she is able to make multiple interrupt attacks, and then being able to get the killing blow and continue chaining attacks, can really do some amazing things. This bow can even hold up as you progress much later in the game if you continue down the marksman path of skills and you take steady hands, guaranteeing critical shots for all of your ranged Overwatch attacks, such as interrupt Overwatch here, and being able to get the kills, continue to chain attacks. Then you can tailor Jewel's build to be entirely focused onto crit damage because she's guaranteed to crit, and then you can just stack the damage, and then that will hopefully guarantee kills against the enemies, which will just keep on continuing into more interrupt attacks. She can kill entire squadrons of enemies coming at you, and it is absolutely amazing. The temple here has so many different opportunities for items. You can get the schematic for throwing knives if you buy, I believe, at least 3 blades off of the merchant here at the very beginning. You can get the schematic for the water jug tactical item if you help out the priest of Apollon here at the burning temple. The temple also has the schematic for caltrops available right here on this chest. If you turn on the cheat vision, you'll be able to find it pretty easily if we use Zenobia again as a point of reference. Climbing these stairs and then getting to this little balcony area is able to give you this secret chest and caltrop schematics. Now, I'm not going to guarantee that I keep up with 100% finding all of the tactical items here, but the ones that are readily available and adjacent to these locations that we're already visiting, I want to call out. And depending on your path through the quest of Divide and Conquer, you can find yet another legendary item, which will be through interactions here at the temple. There is a legendary talisman available in this quest, and there are a lot of different paths that you can take to be able to complete this quest, but only one of the paths will lend you the legendary item. First off, we talk with Theophilus here at the Temple of Apollon, and he effectively just insults us the entire time. Then if you turn quickly, you see this female figure running away from this site. She is jogging down to be able to cut off our exit to our horses, and she is the lady Zenobia, who will give us another dialogue option once we meet her. Zenobia is the wife of the Roman governor appointed to the region who was murdered by the other guy, and the plot gets complicated here, guys. It gets complicated, and so does resolving this quest, because we have all these different optional paths to be able to see to the downfall of the current Greek rulers. You can find a poison in an adjacent village to be able to poison him. You can talk about secret correspondence he is having with the enemy king, which you can pick up this incriminating evidence in the very corner of the burning temple, leading us to believe that the temple was potentially being burned down to cover up this evidence. But neither of those options gives you access to the legendary item that we are going for.
I'm sorry. I don't mean to hurt you, but I just want you to see that he's using you.
I know you can. But trying to destroy my relationship is not the way to show it.
Let's just drop it. Will I see you tomorrow for dinner?
Of course.
Seems we've discovered Theophilus's lover. This could be turned to our advantage.
After snooping through that whole conversation, we are able to progress the quest in a way that will give us the legendary item to be able to find these two ladies talking. You head up the stairs from Zenobia, so down here, we've got down the stairs and the gladiator who will challenge Cineros, and then you go up the stairs, around. You have to listen to their entire conversation, be able to get that extra dialogue, and then if you follow the lady who had just walked off, she heads over to this secluded spot where you are able to talk to her. Speaking with her next to the statue gives us this dialogue option.
I am Eritha. I am a priestess here at the temple.
You are close to Theophilus?
I am.
You get unique dialogue here if you have chosen Pathos, but to be able to get the legendary item, you don't have to do that. You can kill her outright right here, which is going to be going down the path of trying to anger Theophilus. And here we are able to loot her body to be able to pick up the amulet we are going for.
Cold, even by my standards.
Eritha's Medallion is able to heal your character every single round. Unfortunately, is not able to heal her anymore. This is an amazing item. It is not as comical as the previous talisman we have picked up. This is definitely a serious item and an absolutely amazing one to be able to add to your party. While your first inclination might be to give this to one of your heavies, this is a little bit counterproductive because they have the shield strength, which will be able to take damage for them, keeping their health high for those initial rounds of combat. The Medallion is likely going to see more mileage if you put it onto one of your light infantry that you're going to be throwing at the enemy down a flank so that he doesn't need support from somebody else in the party, or potentially giving it to one of your spearmen who are still operating in the front lines close to the enemies but don't have the shield and extra armor levels to be able to protect them. As a final note, following this interaction through does not commit you to finishing the quest, angering Theophilus, and then having combat with him here in the temple. You can still pursue any of these other options options to ultimately get rid of him, and then also multiple options in how you deal with Zenobia filling the power vacuum. But being able to follow this interaction through is the only way that you get this legendary item. We are going to leave the temple to be able to pick up one more that is just lying around, and then we are going to go for all of the items off of the quests. Hiking over to the mountaintop ruins will let us find a legendary staff that is going to be perfect for Cineros. We get this interesting little dialogue as we enter into the area. The game is prompting you to search around different corners of the map to be able to find special items. We've got two interactable locations here. One is the barrel in the corner. It's got nice stuff, but nothing legendary. But this box over in the corner, it can be found easily enough with the cheat vision on, and these vines are actually, your characters are able to climb them. So we're able to get around to the corner. There's not much of a puzzle in figuring out how to get here, even though it doesn't initially seem like you would be able to reach this chest. And then within the chest, once we make it, is the Rod of Asclepius. Asclepius is the god of healing and medicine, which is part of why we see the snakes as a symbol of doctors even today, and it will increase the healing of your character that is wielding the rod by 25%, and every time you kill a character, you restore 10% of the maximum health of a random ally. At first, this is going to be the perfect upgrade for whatever equipment Cineros has been using, and being able to get that bonus healing percentage is really the value here. It's also a perfectly serviceable weapon in terms of dealing damage, but once you craft the legendary version of Cineros' toga, he is also going to be getting a healing bonus out of that as well. Cineros is quickly going to hit a point where his healing effects are so high that he's going to be topping characters off with a single action point, and then the rod is honestly overkill, and you could transition this off to another character who's going to be trying to proc its effect through dealing damage, or one of your B-team generics who wants to be able to be in a little bit more of a supportive role. If this video has been helpful so far, then leave a like. The support for the videos helps me out a lot in figuring out the new content that I want to put out onto the channel. Our next legendary items take us to the fishing village of Troas. You're going to have to go here to be able to complete the Whack the Mole main quest line, but there are a couple extras lying around hidden with the villagers here that you can interact with. This fishing village is full of tons of little goodies, like this little box here, this little box here, and this is also a location just like the warehouse that I mentioned at the beginning. To be able to get the first legendary item, you will get a bonus side quest that will appear right in this area if you come back and revisit this location later. It's not going to give you a legendary item, but I want to call it out that you can get rewarded if you keep on coming back to these important locations. I kind of wish the game would tell you on the world map if anything had changed at these locations for you to go and investigate, because otherwise you can waste a lot of time. There's plenty of locations that don't have any change when you revisit them, and otherwise it is kind of a hit and miss piece to see if you get any extra tidbits, and you can waste a lot of time if you're going to constantly come back to these locations. Right there, we were able to pick up the schematic for Passum, which is a unique type of wine that is going to give us a new tactical item. I'm not sure if that is always at this location or if it is random loot. There's a lot of these that are also just random pieces of loot that you can find. But what is always here is this giant conspicuous wooden building, and if we use the cheat vision and we run around the waterfront, well, we can see that there's a guard here, a door here, and right on this side we can see through the wall that there is another object that we can interact with on the inside. This is a Greek gambling den, and being able to get inside will allow us to loot a legendary dagger, which you are not going to see very many legendary daggers throughout the game. So picking this one up is very nice indeed. The guard out front is hilarious. He basically doesn't say anything to you as you go through, and you get the option to kill him to be able to get inside, which you have to do. Looting his body gives you the tavern key, and then you're able to get through the door and bust in. Once we have killed everyone inside, then we will be able to loot the chest in the back of the room to be able to pick up our new legendary razor. Here we get Occam's Razor, plus 50% damage to flanked enemies as a flat passive. This is amazing. It is also truly hilarious that they did different attack art for all the different ways that you can stab people with this razor to do the same amount of damage. Our next important stop takes us out of the tavern, all the way down the beach and off to this wine merchant here in the corner.
Good day, good day.
Achilles here will offer you an extra rare bottle of wine, which is something that you have heard of. It is so famous here in this land, and you have to pay an absolute fortune to be able to acquire it. If you've taken the Logos path, you will be able to grab a discount, which I am going to use here. Otherwise, you have to pay up 2,000 denarii to be able to get this bottle of wine. But don't let it scare you away. The reward at the end of this quest chain will certainly be worth it. As a side note here, you are also able to purchase other crafting materials from her to be able to make unique tactical items. So certainly go through the different dialogue options that Achilles offers. You will not be disappointed. Buying that bottle of wine gives you the side quest Blood of Jupiter, and so you can then go back to Lesbos, give the bottle over to Lucullus, or there are certain other options where you will be able to meet Lucullus here in the mainland, where you can hand the bottle off to him and be able to progress this quest. After we give Lucullus the wine, he is very impressed and promises to repay the favor, and so if we return to our camp and then check in the tent, we will be able to receive our gift back from Lucullus. Speaking with him has the added bonus at a certain point in the campaign of also giving you a new limited use tactic that you can use against the Greeks that will be absolutely devastating to their manpower. It's one-time use, but it is certainly going to be nice to be able to pull out if you are up against a seriously well-numbered and well-supplied enemy. The next time you make it back to your tent, there is a box you can interact with here in the corner that will have the letter from Lucullus, schematic for Aegis, and the ancient Greek shield plate. These are all the ingredients necessary for being able to craft your first legendary shield, and oh man, this one is a doozy. 50% chance to set blinded on any attacker who damages your shield in melee, reduces their accuracy to 1, and imposes a 50% miss chance. Blinding enemies can effectively remove them from the fight for a few turns, so my pick is give this to your favorite heavy and just watch the enemies uselessly swing their swords around trying to hit him. Our next legendary item, I actually cannot tell you where to find it. This is because it is a random loot available anywhere here in Act 1. I am talking about Harpe, or the Sickle blade here. You pick it up as a crafting material. You're going to see other guides that call out exactly where they found this component, but it is available anywhere in Act 1. You can find it all over the place, and once you get it, you have to go through a bit of a trip to be able to actually forge it into the sword. First up, head over to Sextus, your smith, and then you can ask him about the Sickle blade. Sextus points you to the smith at the Temple of Apollon, and here you can speak with Boethus about the Sickle blade, and he will give you the schematics to be able to forge Harpe. Back home to our forge we go with schematic in hand, and we are able now to craft Harpe, giving us attack of opportunity can trigger twice. This sword is not my favorite because it is set up to give itself a high damage variance here with the lower damage minimum and then the higher damage maximum. Its abilities kind of synergize with this, and then also its attack of opportunity bonus is very situational. There are a couple of use situations that are worth mentioning here. The cheesiest one is giving it to your spearman, and if you go all the way down the medic tree, you get interference. If an enemy within your reach attacks an ally, you get to make an attack of opportunity against that enemy, and here with the sword with Harpe, you would be able to make multiple attacks of opportunity, triggering interference a couple times, or be able to trigger interference and then still have an opportunity attack during the off turn. The problem is the enemies have to be within your reach, and Harpe is going to have a much shorter reach than a staff or a pike would for the spearman, so it's not the best case, but you could find some ways that are pretty hilarious to be able to use this. Otherwise, the key to be able to get a lot of good use out of Harpe is synergizing with characters who are going to force enemies to move in places where you're going to be able to trigger attacks of opportunity. So you have the heavies that can taunt enemies towards them, and then you can place the character with Harpe in front of them to be able to use the attack of opportunity against them as they advance. You are also going to be able to find stuff like assist here at the end of the sniper tree for the archer. The target provokes an attack of opportunity as if they had moved, so you can fire at somebody who's standing in front of the character with Harpe, and then the character with Harpe is able to make that free attack. Ruse is kind of your final option on being able to force enemies to move while it is your turn, and you get to target an area and then force the enemies to flee from that area. This is a really powerful skill, and Harpe can just compound how much use you get out of that, triggering attacks of opportunity, and then going up to embarrassing Ruse, which will also smash the enemy's morale. It can be a devastating combo. All of these tactics do require a lot of setup between your characters to be able to get the character with Harpe in a position to capitalize on other characters, forcing those enemies to move around, but depending on your level of tactical genius, you can certainly make it pay off. We are off to find the legendary Spear of Achilles, the most elusive legendary weapon here in all of Act 1, but in the comments you guys are going to have to let me know what is your favorite legendary item and how are you getting the best use out of it. We have to follow a trail of clues to be able to get the Spear of Achilles, and it starts here at the fishing village of Troas. We go to the house on the hill, around to the garden in the back, and then there is this strange symbol setting on the tree, the symbol of the warrior stone tablet. Read the italicized flavor text and you get this riddle. Heroes and legends are made and unmade, but there is one man whose light will not fade. Gods blessed him with invulnerability as an infant. Guarding his memory is our sacred commitment. On a peninsula east of Troas, where he fought and fell, find our symbol on a statue with a story to tell. There is no formal quest framework for being able to follow the clues to find the Sword of Achilles, but the riddle told us that we needed to go east of Troas to the peninsula, which is clearly going to be right to this zone. We start to walk out on the peninsula and we should be able to get the Statue of the Warrior event. We get a brief description here of finding a statue and a secret compartment in the statue, and then we get our second clue. Symbol of the warrior brooch. A delicate brooch opens to reveal the following short inscription. Turn south if our guidance is what you seek. Cross the channel and search the beach. His weapon is within your reach. Turning south and crossing a channel leads us all the way down to return to Lesbos, where we get to search the beaches for our next clue. Buried treasure. We have journeyed all the way to the southern tip of the island, but now the thing is covering it up. Having located the beach where you believe the brooch with the symbol of the warrior directed you to go, you set about searching the beach for any further clues. The idea that we could actually do this, that we would know the beach based on that single line inscription, and then we just start looking around on the beach is hilarious. Anyway, so again, my character was right here on the southern tip of Lesbos, and what we found was the symbol of the warrior papyrus hid inside a chest that we buried up on the beach. At Troy, when the warrior fell in the siege, he was buried within the city's reach. It is said he was laid to rest near the waves beyond a mountain peak, shielding his grave. Our warrior rests overlooking the sea, gazing west at his birthplace of Thessaly. Knowing little of Troy and Thessaly, I mostly pieced together the location here based on looking west, being next to the coast, and having the mountain shielding his grave. We're going here to the very tip of this kind of interesting peninsula formation. The Tomb of Achilles. Here we actually get to bring companions with us to go and explore the tomb. This zone has plenty of little goodies for you to pick up, but from the main sarcophagus, we were able to grab the Spear of Achilles. Grants the Reaper status effect at the beginning of combat and a 5% chance to gain the status effect again on every subsequent turn. The Reaper status effect gives you refreshed attack actions every time you score a kill, not just against pawns, making it one of the most powerful abilities in the game. We're also getting a little bit of bonus movement and some critical damage. Could this truly be the spear of the famous hero Achilles? It certainly looks the part, and the balance of the weapon is perfect. Whoever it once belonged to, now it is yours. I must not know my ancient history well enough, because I thought that Alexander the Great had already raided Achilles' tomb and taken his armor. Maybe his weapons were scattered, or this is actually picking it up after Alexander used it. I don't know. Let me know in the comments if that is the actual telling of the story. Anyway, this spear is absolutely amazing, and it is the perfect choice to be able to give to Bestia or some other Veles that is going to have high burst damage and is also going to be using Bloodthirsty to try and ramp up their damage based on their kills. Normally you have to go all the way down the Brawler tree to be able to pick up a Reaper, and then you can activate this ability Paying Focus to be able to get this status effect. There could be an argument for doubling up and still giving this to your Brawler so that he starts with Reaper for free, and then he can chain up a couple hits, a couple kills, and then be able to use it later on to roll over the enemies once you have softened up more on later turns. Reaper is going to reset action points, used skills, and movement. So I think that the strongest play you can possibly make is giving this to an assassin that is going to have sneak attack amped up. have some born ready stats setups that you've got burst damage to be able to overcome whatever the enemies have, and then you can just burst on the scene with this amazing amount of damage, stack up Bloodthirsty, see your damage ceiling go up to the roof, and then just cruise through the rest of the battle from there. Now we're going to quickly go over the legendary items you get from completing the main story quests here in Act 1. These are ones you cannot miss. You have to complete these quests to be able to progress the story, and you gain these items as a guarantee once you win the quests. I'm not actually going to play through the missions. If you're having trouble with the missions or you want to see me play through the missions, I've got a Let's Play where I'm going through all of these on insane difficulty. It has been super fun. You can check my playlist to be able to see these missions if you're having any trouble. First up, Whack the Mole takes you to the fishing village of Troas, and it allows you to acquire the Traitor's Mail unique medium armor. You are able to dodge the first ranged reaction attack made against you in every single round, so the examples are Overwatch or Interrupt. This is very situational as to whether or not the ranged enemies are actually going to be setting up Overwatch attacks, but the option to completely nullify their turn by dodging that attack they set up is very nice. On top of that, it's just a really nice set of medium armor with a bunch of useful affixes. It can be good to wear yourself if you are a lighter armored character, or you can pawn it off to one of your other subordinates. I'm giving it to one of my villas because I like to shoot them out around the flanks and don't necessarily give them a lot of support in battle, so the more opportunities they have to be able to dodge or negate damage, the better, so that they can operate without any support. Next up is Mortuite Salutant, where you go to the gladiator school, you start a revolt, and you keep Thracia from joining in against Rome. You were able to walk away with a Damianos Pike, and this weapon is really amazing. It grants the ready status if you end your turn adjacent to a character wielding a shield. The ready status gives you a free opportunity attack if an enemy moves within your reach, so this is really awesome, especially because the reach of a pike is 2 spaces. Damianos himself honestly shows the best tactic on how to be able to use this weapon. He is a destroyer going down the damage focus tree for the spearman, and he is always fighting directly next to a heavy who has gone down the defender tree, able to pick up protect, meaning that damage to adjacent allies is split between the two of them. This gives the pair incredible durability, and it allows the pike to always set up in the ready status to get the extra attacks out against the enemies. Because the spearman has access to some support abilities to keep his friends topped up, then these two could be a fully functioning pair off away from the rest of your characters, or they could be the central focal point of your formation. The last legendary item linked to a main quest is the Crown of Mithridates, and I know earlier on I said that you couldn't miss these, you just had to play through the missions to be able to grab them. I misspoke a little bit, because on this mission, you have to take a specific path through the previous story mission, The Smuggler. In this quest, you are faced with a decision either to go and destroy Mithridates' supply stockpile, or to go off to the ship that had been smuggling supplies in and gather evidence against your political enemies back in Rome. So the split is destroy the supplies, then you can face Mithridates on the battlefield and you'll be able to take his crown once you win the siege of Chalcedon. If you go for gathering evidence, Mithridates is able to escape at the end of the siege, and you get a very different story beat when you return to Rome. As an aside, another slight variation in that final siege of Chalcedon is if you leave the Greek general alive from Lesbos, the island, the tutorial at the very beginning, and then you choose to trade him in a hostage exchange in a side mission prior to the siege of Chalcedon, you will be able to face him and ultimately kill him there in the siege in one of the stages of that battle. But here is Mithridates' crown. This helmet is, it is amazing. The unique ability, all resistances are doubled. You can just pop this on the heavy of your choice and watch all of the enemy strikes become glancing blows. The way resistances work here in the game is they represent the percentage chance of a specific damage type being converted into a glancing blow, which does significantly less damage and is not able to apply any additional effects. Except for burning, I believe burning can get through, but nothing else does. I think giving the helmet to a princeps is a no-brainer, but then there are 2 ways to be able to go about manipulating the power of doubling all your resistances. One of them is that you can go for a lot of items that will increase all your resistances together, and then because those resistances are doubled, you can just have this extremely well-rounded tanky character. The way that you can cheese the system is by putting it on a character who is a vanguard who has taken flawless defense. When you activate activate Flawless Defense, and remember this does not actually take up your action, you have 3 charges that you get to spend whenever you want during the battle. All your resistances are set to equal the value of the highest resistance, and maximum resistance is increased by 10%, but your movement is cut down by 3. This means you can focus all of the resistances provided by your equipment into a single type of resistance, and then spring that ability to be able to hit fairly easily 100% resistance to all damage types. Back in Rome at the very end of the act, and there are only a few legendary items hidden around here, but they're ones that you do not want to miss. The Sword of Julius Caesar. You will have been lugging these broken crafting materials around from the tutorial. To be able to grab these, you have to help Julius out with his quest in the very beginning of the tutorial, get his journal back from the camp bully, then speak with his commander after the ambush and Julius's death, and he will give you the broken sword. At Lucullus's party that he throws at the very beginning of entering Rome, you're able to speak with Cotta here in the corner, who is dining with his family members. These are the family members of Julius Caesar. Cotta's pretty salty about having been imprisoned and spending the entire campaign behind bars, and his sister is still very bitter over the death of her son. If you remark that you were a friend of Caesar's, then you will get the option to be able to show the broken pieces of the sword, and if you do so, she will send over the crafting schematics to you and says that you can effectively hang on to the sword. You will have to wait to be able to craft the sword into Act 2, but once you get it, you get this legendary sword. Every hit applies the Essayed status effect, which guarantees the next attack on the same turn will be a critical hit that cannot be resisted. This is an incredible effect, and the sword is naturally tailored to being able to amp up your critical damage for yourself. So if you want to play around giving this to a character and pairing them up with a flag bearer who is going to be able to refresh their attack action, then you are going to be able to set up guaranteed crits for yourself and use this amped up critical damage to be able to make the most of that. The sword fits well in the hands of either a Princeps or a Veles. The Veles is going to be the one who is going to be able to more easily make multiple attacks against the same opponent. So if you have grabbed Rush or Reaper at the end of the Assassin and Brawler trees respectively, then you will be able to refresh your own attack action and not need any support or any coordination to be able to score these critical hits. At the same time, having your heavy setup enemies for easy takedowns from your companions is a completely viable strategy. There is a lot of opportunity here, and I really like how this sword captures the flavor of Julius Caesar being a tactical mind, able to set up these critical hits and then choosing how you want to be able to cash in on that status effect. Our last legendary item here at the very end of Act 1 can be found by walking around the streets of Rome, and who do we bump into? None other than Sextus, our trusty smith. He says he has something we might be interested in, and guys, when a shopkeeper says this, it has always been a legendary item. 2,000 denarii feels steep, but we know it is going to a good place. Sextus is a family man. And now the legendary shield is ours. At the end of your turn, your shield strength is restored by however many movement points you have left. On top of just being a stalwart shield with a good stat line here, this effect is really powerful. This means that you are always going to be able to have decent shield strength when you get bogged down into a knockout slugfight and your characters are no longer moving around. There is a little bit of anti-synergy if you like using flawless defense to be able to increase the durability of your tanks, because here your movement is reduced by 3, so that is going to be taking away the shield strength that could be being returned to you. On the other hand, there is a beautiful synergy in giving this shield to a veteran who has skilled up Nimble, giving them more movement points even if they are wearing that heavy armor. With the shield itself also providing an increase in your movement points, which feeds into its unique ability, and you can also find talismans that will be able to increase your movement as well. You can have the most agile heavy character ever, and then when they get bogged down into a fight, they're going to still be incredibly durable because their shield is always going to be coming back up based on their incredibly high movement. That is every single legendary item that you can find over the course of Act 1. Let me know in the comments if I have missed any, and also let me know your favorite legendary items and how you are using them. Now, each of your core companions is also going to have legendary items that they are able to craft when you break down their personal worn out items at the very beginning. These items don't really have any flexibility because they can only be worn by these specific characters. We're going to go through them really fast and just touch on the strategy around the best builds for these characters based on getting the most out of these awesome effects. First up is Queso. His unique heavy armor grants the Indomitable status effect, which prevents all morale loss. This really doesn't matter because his morale as one of your core companions should be so insanely high that he's not going to break anytime soon. His helmet is much more interesting, taunting a random enemy when you inflict a critical hit, forcing them to attack you on their next turn. The range of this effect is infinite. This means that one random enemy anywhere on the battlefield is going to be taunted and have to focus on him based on you scoring a critical hit. This is so good. Queso as a heavy, of course, wants to be drawing fire for your team, and if you have equipped him with the Shield of Medusa, which is going to blind enemies who attack him, the more focus he gets, the better. There are some very interesting build considerations when you look at trying to play into these critical hits. Your talisman is going to be the main way that you can get an increased critical hit chance. But if you want to be able to guarantee critical hits, then Crocea Moore's Julius Caesar's sword with that Ancile status effect is the way to go. You can either give this sword to Queso, allow him to attack, and then a flag bearer to refresh his attack action to score the critical hit, or you can set up Ancile on other enemies with a different ally, and then bring Queso in to be able to guarantee those critical hits. Cineros has his Magister Toga, and there's a lot of really interesting things going on with this item. The unique effect is that using a bandage does not trigger enemy attacks of opportunity. This is oh so good when he is on the front lines and trying to support your party. But just as potent is that this is increasing your healing by 44. That's right, that is not a percent. That is just a flat number that makes you heal insane amounts. This means that effectively any of Cineros' healing skills is going to be fully topping up your characters, and you don't need to rely on the extra Rod of Asclepius, which you pick up pretty early on, to be able to increase your healing further. You can hand this off to somebody else who is going to be working as a support piece for your team, and Cineros in his little toga here is going to be able to carry you through. Now his toga is providing very little protection, but it is increasing your health by 32%, which is a pretty fair trade-in for an armor value or higher resistances that the other armors give. Bestia is looking sharp in the Champion Plumata. Here the unique effect is if your attack kills a target, half of the focus spent on the attack is refunded. This is really pushing Bestia down the duelist subclass, being able to pick up Shiv and kill on ground, which are the only attacks that cost focus to be refunded from this unique armor. Even if you are not going entirely down duelist or doing a more balanced build, this can still be an excellent piece of armor because you are increasing your focus maximum by 98%. Why they didn't say 100, I have no idea, but this means that his pool of focus is so high. And with the Born Ready skill being fairly core to any good Veles build, being able to start out with that bar heftily filled or entirely filled means that you can keep on churning through all of these special abilities every single turn. Julia has got her Ranger's armor here. Whenever you use a weapon skill with charges, it has a 50% chance to be refunded. This effect is beautiful. It means that you can churn out your most powerful attacks on the ammo system, and it applies for tactical items as well, so give her some hard-hitting items, make her attack, and try and trigger this as often as possible. It's also giving her plus 65% health, and so you end up in this bizarre situation where Julia is going to be the highest health character in your party by a long shot. Finally, her hood grants the low profile status if you don't kill a character for one turn, and this low profile status means that enemies will prioritize other allies over her. This is wonderful for positioning her out on a flank and then waiting for the right time when she is safe enough to be able to strike, and the enemies are going to be moving towards your other allies instead of her as she is doing this. Collecting all of these legendary items is awesome, and Act 2 absolutely showers you with new legendary items right from the very beginning. Stay tuned to the channel if you want to be able to see my future guides for Expeditions Rome, and let me know if you guys have been enjoying the content. Until next time, thank you guys for watching, and have a good one.